The air in Level 7 of the Vexillian Imperial Research Facility stank of antiseptic and something else. Something Kai Novak couldn't quite name, but recognized from a dozen battlefields across 3 systems. Death. Not fresh death, but the slow, lingering kind. 30 minutes until extraction, the voice of his handler, Tomas, crackled through his earpiece. Status. Security systems neutralized on levels 1 through 6, Kai reported, voice barely above a whisper. Downloading research data now. He'd accomplished what the Resistance had sent him for, bioweapon schematics and research notes that would help them counter whatever the Empire was developing. Yet something kept drawing him deeper into the facility's restricted sections. There's an additional level not on the blueprints, he added, eyes narrowing at the biometric scanner guarding an unmarked doorway. Going to investigate. Negative, stick to the mission parameters. Kai hesitated, then switched off his comm. In 12 years as a mercenary, his instincts had never steered him wrong. They were screaming now. Using a severed finger he'd collected from an unfortunate guard, Kai pressed it against the scanner. The door hissed open, revealing a spiral staircase descending into darkness. He activated his night vision implant and moved silently downward. Level 7 was nothing like the sterile white laboratories above. This was a dungeon of metal and shadow lined with cages. Most stood empty, their doors hanging open. But from the far end came a sound, soft, rhythmic, breathing. Kai moved cautiously forward, pulse rifle ready. The cages grew progressively larger, designed for increasingly sizable specimens. The breathing grew clearer, not an animal's panting, but measured, deliberate, as if trying to remain unnoticed. The final cage was twice Kai's height, its bars reinforced titanium. Within the shadows lay a figure, curled upon itself on a floor of bare metal. No bedding, no facilities, nothing but a small, empty bowl. Shit, Kai breathed, lowering his weapon. The figure flinched at his voice, pressing itself against the far wall. As Kai approached, his implant adjusted to the darkness, revealing iridescent skin marked with patterns that seemed to shift like oil on water. The prisoner was humanoid, unmistakably female, with limbs too graceful and elongated to be human. Her skin bore evidence of repeated procedures, sampling sites, injection marks, surgical scars. Her ribs pressed against translucent skin, evidence of prolonged starvation. Around her neck was a metal collar bearing a designation, Specimen T-724 Hybrid Failure. I'm not going to hurt you, Kai said, though he doubted she understood him. The alien woman raised her head, and Kai felt his breath catch. Her eyes were unlike anything he'd seen across 17 planetary systems, deep violet irises ringed with amber, pupils vertical like a cat's. But it wasn't their exotic appearance that struck him. It was the intelligence, the awareness, the unmistakable person looking back at him. A holographic terminal beside the cage displayed her file. Subject demonstrates unexpected resistance to genetic modification. Immune system repeatedly rejects enhancements, recommended for termination and tissue harvesting. Kai's stomach turned. The date for termination was tomorrow. He approached the cage slowly, holstering his weapon. My name is Kai, he said, tapping his chest. I'm getting you out of here. The alien woman watched him warily, then straightened slightly, revealing more of her form. Despite her emaciated state, there was a dignity in her posture. She tapped her own chest with a 6-fingered hand. Ilara, she whispered, her voice like wind through crystal. Kai smiled despite himself. Ilara, he repeated, then pointed to the lock. I'm going to open this, then we run. He placed a small explosive charge on the locking mechanism, stepped back, and detonated it. The door swung open with a groan of metal. Ilara didn't move, her eyes fixed on him with suspicion born of countless betrayals. Kai extended his hand. Trust me. Her eyes flicked to his hand, then to his face, searching for deceit. Finding none, she slowly uncurled her body. She was tall, nearly 7 feet, but dangerously thin. As she stood, she swayed dangerously. When she collapsed, Kai caught her, surprised by how little she weighed. Up close, her scent was like night-blooming flowers, alien but not unpleasant. I have you, he promised, lifting her into his arms. His comm crackled back to life as Tomas overrode the manual shutdown. Kai, extraction in 15, where the hell are you? Change of plans, Kai replied, already moving toward the stairs with Ilara cradled against his chest. I'm bringing someone out. That wasn't the mission. It is now. As alarms began to wail throughout the facility, Kai felt Alara's fingers tentatively touch his face, as if confirming he was real. In her eyes, fear battled with something he hadn't expected to find in this hellish place: hope. "Hold on," he told her, breaking into a run. "This is going to get complicated." Sirens wailed as Kai charged up the stairwell, Alara's weightless form cradled against his chest. Her breathing came in shallow gasps, each intake of breath seemingly painful. "Extraction point compromised," Tomas's voice crackled through Kai's calm. "Imperial forces converging on the facility. You've got 5 minutes before they lock down completely." "Send alternate coordinates," Kai grunted, ducking into a service corridor as booted feet thundered past. "And prep a medical kit. My companion needs attention." Alara's eyes fixed on his face, studying him with an intensity that felt like she was peering into his soul. One six-fingered hand gripped his armored vest weakly. "Danger," she whispered. The word awkwardly formed as if she was experimenting with his language. "Yeah, we're in a bit of trouble," Kai agreed, checking the hallway before sprinting toward an emergency exit. "Can you understand me?" She touched her temple, then his, words learning fast. The facility's defense systems activated with a mechanical groan. Steel barriers began descending from the ceiling, cutting off corridors one by one. Kai swore, adjusting his course. They'd need to go through the labs. "Hold tight," he told Alara, feeling her arms tighten around his neck as he kicked open a door. Inside, horrified scientists looked up from their workstations. Kai fired 2 warning shots into the ceiling. "Out now." As the researchers fled, Alara's eyes widened at the laboratory equipment. Her body trembled against Kai's, and he felt dampness on his shoulder where her face pressed against him. "They won't hurt you again," he promised, setting her down briefly to gather supplies. "Can you walk?" Alara pushed herself upright, standing unsteadily on legs too long deprived of use. Her eyes darted to a cabinet across the room, and with surprising speed she lunged for it, retrieving a small crystalline vial. "Need," she said simply, tucking it into Kai's pack. An explosion rocked the building. "Time to go," Kai urged, supporting her weight as they moved toward a window overlooking the facility's forested perimeter. 3 stories, Alara observed, her language skills visibly improving with each passing minute. "Fatal fall." "Not with this," Kai replied, attaching a grappling hook to his belt. "Trust me." She searched his eyes for a long moment, then nodded. "Yes." Kai wrapped his arm around her waist, feeling her lean into him. With his free hand, he shattered the window with a single shot from his pistol. Cold night air rushed in, carrying the scent of distant rain. "Hold on," he shouted as Imperial guards burst through the lab door behind them. Squeezing the trigger on his grappling device, Kai leaped. For a heart-stopping moment, they were suspended in freefall before the cable snapped taut, sending them swinging toward the tree line. They hit the forest floor hard, Kai absorbing most of the impact. Pain shot through his shoulder, but there was no time to assess the damage. Taking Alara's hand, he pulled her into the dense undergrowth as searchlights swept the area. 5 kilometers to extraction," he whispered, checking his nav display. The alien landscape was treacherous in the darkness, phosphorescent fungi casting eerie blue light over twisted roots and sudden drop-offs. Twice, Alara prevented Kai from stepping into toxic flora that his sensors missed. The third time, she pulled him back just as a carnivorous vine lashed out at the space where his head had been. "You know this terrain," Kai realized. Alara nodded, her bioluminescent skin patterns pulsing softly. "Born here, before." She gestured back toward the facility, unable to find words for what had been done to her there. "You're native to this planet." "Half," she said, "mother from stars, father from forest." She closed her eyes briefly. "Both dead now, Empire took all." The pursuing guards were gaining, their shouted commands and the howling of tracking beasts growing closer. Kai's shoulder was definitely dislocated, the pain intensifying with every step. Alara must have sensed his distress. Without warning, she guided him toward a tangle of roots, revealing a hidden crevice. "Down," she instructed. The narrow passage descended steeply into darkness. Kai hesitated, but the sound of approaching hunters decided him. They slid down together into a luminous underground cavern where crystal formations cast rainbow light across phosphorescent pools. "Safe path," Alara whispered, pointing to a barely visible trail. Ancient ways Empire doesn't know. For the first time since the sirens began, Kai felt they might actually survive this. As they moved deeper into the cavern system, following Alara's unerring guidance, her hand found his, fingers intertwining. "Why?" she asked suddenly. "Why save me?" Kai thought about the mission, about duty and objectives and strategic advantages. But looking at her, this extraordinary being who'd endured unimaginable suffering yet still found the courage to trust, he gave her the only answer that mattered. "Because when I looked at you, I didn't see a specimen. I saw a person." Alara's skin rippled with patterns of blue and gold. In the crystal light, Kai could see tears tracking down her cheeks, tears that seemed to glow from within like liquid starlight. "Person," she repeated softly, tasting the word and with it the first true sense of freedom. Dawn broke over the misty valleys of Vexilia's northern wilderness as Kai and Alara emerged from the underground passage. The extraction point was still 2 kilometers away, but Imperial drones hadn't yet expanded their search to this region. "Need to rest," Kai admitted, his dislocated shoulder sending waves of agony through his body with each movement. Blood seeped through a tear in his body armor where shrapnel from the facility explosion had caught him. Alara studied his injuries with concern. "Follow," she said, her vocabulary expanding remarkably with each passing hour. "Safe place near." She led him through dense underbrush, moving with increasing confidence as her strength returned. Kai noticed how she seemed to communicate with the environment, fingers brushing against plants that responded to her touch, opening pathways, revealing hidden routes. After an hour's careful travel, they reached a massive fallen tree whose hollowed trunk concealed the entrance to what appeared to be an abandoned research outpost. Ancient Vexilian symbols adorned the weathered metal door. "Ancestors studied stars here," Alara explained, placing her palm against a tarnished panel. The door slid open with a reluctant groan. "Before Empire came." Inside, solar panels had kept minimal systems functioning over what must have been decades of abandonment. Dust covered instrument panels and storage units, but the structure remained sound, offering sanctuary from both pursuers and the elements. "We rest here," Alara decided. "Heal you." She guided Kai to sit on a padded bench, then rummaged through cabinets until she found what appeared to be a medical kit. Her movements were becoming more fluid, her body recovering with astonishing speed from its prolonged confinement. "I need to set my shoulder," Kai said, gritting his teeth. "It's dislocated." Alara's violet eyes assessed the injury. Without hesitation, she positioned herself behind him, placing one hand on his back and the other on his arm. "Pain comes," she warned, "then better." Before Kai could prepare himself, she executed a perfect reduction maneuver. White-hot agony tore through him, followed by immediate relief as the joint slipped back into place. He gasped, momentarily dizzy. "How did you—" "Watch doctors," she said simply, opening the crystal vial she'd taken from the facility. "Learned." The vial contained a luminescent blue gel. Alara applied it to his wounds with gentle fingertips. Wherever it touched, pain receded, replaced by a pleasant warming sensation. "Regenerative compound," she explained. "They used on me between tests." As she tended to him, Kai truly saw her for the first time. Away from the horror of the facility, in the soft light filtering through the outpost's viewports, Alara was breathtaking. Her skin's iridescent patterns shifted with her emotions, currently a calm azure with flecks of gold. Her features were alien yet strikingly beautiful, with high cheekbones and almond-shaped eyes. Despite her ordeal, grace infused every movement. "Why were you there?" he asked softly. "In that place?" Alara's patterns darkened momentarily. "Empire collects species, tries to make weapons, soldiers." She touched her chest. "I am 2 worlds, mother from Lyria, star travelers, father from here, forest people. Empire thought combination would make perfect weapon." She sat beside him close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her. "But my body rejected changes, fought back, was failure to them." "Not a failure," Kai said fiercely. "A miracle." Alara's eyes widened at his words, her patterns shifting to a warm rose gold. "What is miracle?" "Something extraordinary," Kai explained. "Something that shouldn't be possible but is." He found himself telling her about his own past, orphaned during the Empire's annexation of his homeworld, raised in refugee camps, eventually turning his rage into a career as a mercenary. How he joined the resistance not out of idealism, but seeking vengeance, only to discover purpose instead. As night fell, they shared a meal of emergency rations from Kai's pack and native fruits Alara recognized as safe. The outpost's heating systems created a cocoon of warmth against the wilderness night. Outside, distant howls and strange calls reminded them of dangers lurking beyond their temporary haven. Sleep, Alara urged when Kai's eyes grew heavy. I watch first. Wake me in 4 hours, he murmured, stretching out on a padded bench that served as a makeshift bed. He woke instead to Alara's touch on his face, her expression troubled in the dim emergency lighting. Dreams hunt you, she whispered. You called out. Kai sat up, realizing he'd slept far longer than intended. The nightmares that had plagued him for years, his family's deaths, the faces of those he couldn't save, had returned with their usual vengeance. I should have taken watch, he said, avoiding her gaze. Alara sat beside him, her body radiating gentle heat in the cool night air. With hesitant movements, she reached for his hand, examining it as if it were a fascinating artifact. Her 6 fingers traced the lines on his palm, the calluses, the old scars. So different, she murmured, yet same. When she looked up, her face was closer than he expected. Kai found himself captivated by the depth in her eyes, the ancient wisdom of her species combined with an innocence that her captors had somehow failed to destroy. Thank you, she whispered, for seeing me. Without thinking, Kai raised his hand to her face, fingers lightly tracing the luminescent markings on her cheek. Alara's breath caught, her patterns shifting to a deep, pulsing magenta. She leaned into his touch, eyes drifting closed. The comm unit at Kai's belt chose that moment to crackle to life. Approaching extraction window, came Tomas's voice. 1 hour to rendezvous, confirm status. Reality crashed back. Tomorrow they would leave this planet heading for the resistance base. What place would Alara have there? What future could possibly exist for them? As if reading his thoughts, Alara placed her hand over his heart. We survive, she said with quiet certainty, together. Kai covered her hand with his own, feeling something shift between them, something as fragile and luminous as Alara herself, yet stronger than all the forces arrayed against them. Together, he agreed, and felt the word take root like a promise. Morning mist clung to the valleys as Kai and Alara approached the extraction point, a clearing large enough for the stealth shuttle to land, yet concealed from Imperial scanners by the dense forest canopy. Alara moved with newfound strength, her body's remarkable healing abilities having restored much of her vigor despite years of captivity. Extraction in 20 minutes, Tomas confirmed through Kai's comm. Be advised, we're detecting increased Imperial activity in your sector. Kai checked his weapons, painfully aware of how vulnerable they were in open terrain. Copy that, we'll be ready. Alara's head tilted suddenly, her sensitive hearing picking up something beyond human range. Ships coming, she warned, pointing southwest. Many. Before Kai could respond, the distant whine of engines confirmed her warning. Imperial dropships, at least 4 of them, converging on their position. They found us, Kai muttered, scanning for cover. Tomas, Imperial forces closing in, need immediate extraction. Negative, can't risk the shuttle. Find cover and wait for window. Understood, Kai turned to Alara, whose skin patterns had shifted to alert amber. We need to hide, buy some time. She shook her head, eyes fixed on the horizon. Too late. The forest erupted with the sound of energy weapons as Imperial troops deployed in a standard search pattern. Kai pulled Alara toward a rocky outcropping, providing minimal cover against the advancing forces. This was never about me, Kai realized aloud, watching the methodical deployment. This is about you, they want you back. Alara's eyes darkened. Not specimen, she said firmly, never again. An amplified voice boomed across the clearing. Attention, mercenary, you have stolen Imperial property. Surrender now and we may spare your life. The voice belonged to Commander Drell, head of the research facility. Through his scope, Kai could see the officer's tall figure, surrounded by a phalanx of elite guards. You're not property, Kai told Alara, and I'm not surrendering. She studied his face with those penetrating violet eyes. I can stop them. How? Instead of answering, she removed the remaining regenerative gel from Kai's pack. Empire modified me, failed most changes, but Her iridescent skin patterns began shifting rapidly, their glow intensifying. Some worked. Before Kai could stop her, Elara swallowed the entire contents of the vial. Her body convulsed, patterns flaring brilliantly across her skin like solar flares. Elara, Kai reached for her, but she stepped away, eyes transforming from violet to pure, luminous white. "Trust me," she whispered. Commander Drell's voice came again. "Final warning, return the specimen or die where you stand." Elara stepped out from behind the rocks, her body now radiating light so intense that Kai had to shield his eyes. The Imperial forces faltered, momentarily stunned by her transformation. "I am not your specimen," Elara's voice rang out, somehow amplified beyond normal volume. "I am the last daughter of two worlds you destroyed." Energy surged around her in visible waves, the bioengineered changes the Empire had forced upon her now seemingly under her control. With graceful, deliberate movements, she raised her hands. The forest responded, vegetation erupting from the ground to entangle the Imperial soldiers, trees bending to block their retreat. Commander Drell's composure shattered. "Fire, kill it." Blaster bolts streaked toward Elara, only to dissipate harmlessly against an invisible barrier surrounding her. Kai watched in awe as she manipulated the very environment, a genetic gift from her forest-born father, enhanced by the Empire's crude attempts at weaponization. For a moment, victory seemed within reach. Then Drell activated something on his wrist computer. Elara screamed, falling to her knees as the control collar still around her neck pulsed with cruel energy. "Failsafe protocol," Drell announced smugly. "Did you think we wouldn't build in contingencies for our investments?" Kai didn't hesitate. As Elara collapsed, her protective barrier failing, he broke cover and fired 3 precise shots. The first took out Drell's shield generator. The second shattered his wrist computer. The third struck the commander's shoulder, spinning him to the ground. Imperial troops converged, firing wildly as Kai sprinted to Elara's side. Her skin had dulled to ashen gray, the collar continuing its merciless assault on her nervous system. "Hold on," Kai pleaded, searching for a way to deactivate the device without killing her. Through pain-glazed eyes, Elara looked past him. "Behind," she gasped. Kai turned to find himself staring down the barrel of Commander Drell's sidearm. "You could have been richly rewarded," Drell snarled, blood seeping from his wounded shoulder. "Instead, you'll die beside this failed experiment." Time slowed. Kai saw his death in Drell's eyes, saw the trigger finger tense. Then a blur of movement, Elara somehow finding the strength to lunge forward, her body intercepting the blast meant for Kai. "No," Kai's anguished cry tore from his throat as Elara crumpled against him, a charred wound marking her chest. Rage unlike anything he'd ever known consumed him. With one fluid motion, he drew his backup pistol and fired directly into Drell's face. The commander dropped without a sound. In the chaos that followed, Kai cradled Elara's limp form, frantically searching for signs of life. Her skin patterns flickered weakly, like stars going out one by one. "Stay with me," he begged, his voice breaking. "Please, Elara, stay with me." Her eyes fluttered open, focusing on him with effort. One 6-fingered hand weakly touched his face. "Free now," she whispered. "Thank you for seeing me." "Don't you dare," Kai choked out, tears blurring his vision. "Don't you dare say goodbye. We survived together, remember." The whine of approaching engines signaled the arrival of the extraction shuttle. Tomas's voice shouted through the calm, but Kai barely registered the words. All that mattered was the fatting woman in his arms, this extraordinary being who had saved him in more ways than she could ever know. As Imperial reinforcements closed in from all sides, Kai made his choice. Gathering Elara to his chest, he sprinted toward the landing shuttle, his heart a desperate prayer with each step. "Hold on," he whispered against her hair. "Just hold on." Behind them, Drell's forces regrouped, laser fire cutting through the air around them. Ahead, the shuttle ramp descended, offering salvation or merely a different kind of prison for Elara, if she survived at all. In that moment, cradling her broken body against his, Kai knew with bone-deep certainty that nothing in his life had ever mattered more than bringing this woman to safety, to freedom, to a future that might somehow include them both. Together, he promised her unresponsive form, "We survive together." Consciousness returned to Alara in fragments, the sterile scent of medical equipment, the steady beep of monitors, the sensation of something soft beneath her body. Fear spiked through her. Had it all been a cruel dream? Was she back in the facility? Her eyes flew open, body tensing to flee, only to meet Kai's concerned gaze. He sat beside her bed, unshaven and exhausted, but unmistakably real. "Easy," he murmured, his hand finding hers. "You're safe, we made it." Ilara's racing heart slowed as she took in her surroundings. Not the cold metal cage of her imprisonment, but a warm medical bay with windows overlooking an unfamiliar landscape of rolling hills and distant mountains. "Where?" she managed, her voice raspy from disuse. "Resistance base on Aruna. You've been unconscious for 3 days." Kai's thumb traced gentle circles on her palm. "The doctors weren't sure you'd wake up." Memories rushed back, the escape, the sanctuary, the confrontation with Imperial forces. Her hand moved to her chest, finding a healing scar where Drell's blast had struck her. "The collar." "Gone," Kai assured her. "Our techs removed it while you were unconscious." She touched her neck, finding only smooth skin where the control device had chafed for years. Freedom, true freedom at last. "Your mission," she said suddenly, "the data." A shadow crossed Kai's face. "Incomplete. When I chose to save you instead, I lost access to the deepest level files." "They will punish you." "Worth it," he said simply. The door slid open, revealing a stern-faced woman in a resistance officer's uniform. "She's awake," the woman observed. "Good, we need answers." "Commander Vale," Kai acknowledged, standing. "Ilara's still recovering." Vale's assessing gaze traveled over Ilara, clinical and suspicious. "She's the first living specimen we've recovered from the hybrid program. Her testimony could provide critical intelligence." "I'm not a specimen," Ilara stated, her voice stronger now. "I have name, I have voice." Vale had the grace to look mildly chastened. "Of course, but you understand our position. We know almost nothing about you, yet one of our best operatives risked a critical mission to bring you here." Ilara sat up straighter, ignoring the pain that flared through her healing body. "What you want to know?" Over the next hour, she detailed what she knew of the Empire's genetic program, their attempts to blend the psychic abilities of space-faring species with the biological adaptability of planet-bound ones. How they sought to create the perfect infiltrators, soldiers, and assassins. How most subjects died screaming. How she alone had survived, her body rejecting most modifications while integrating others in unexpected ways. When she finished, Vale's expression had transformed from suspicion to horrified respect. "Your testimony will help us save countless lives," the commander acknowledged. "You have the gratitude of the resistance." After Vale departed, Ilara turned to Kai. "What happens now?" It was the question that had haunted him for days. He took her hand again, fingers interlacing with hers. "That depends on what you want," he said carefully. "The Resistance would welcome you as an ally, or we could find you a sanctuary world, somewhere far from the Empire's reach." "What about you?" she asked, eyes searching his. Kai hesitated. In the 3 days of her unconsciousness, he'd barely left her side, turning down new assignments, defying even Vale's direct orders. He'd had time to examine the feelings that had grown between them, this impossible connection that defied logic, biology, and probability. "I go where I'm needed," he said finally, allowing himself the truth. "Right now, that's wherever you are." Ilara's skin patterns shifted to that deep magenta he'd come to recognize as emotion. Joy, perhaps, or affection. With strength that surprised him, she pulled him closer until their foreheads touched in the traditional greeting of her mother's people. "Then we stay together," she said softly. "Find purpose, make new life." 6 months later, Ilara stood on the balcony of their small home overlooking the valleys of Aruna. The evening breeze carried the scent of flowering vines that climbed the stone walls, plants she had coaxed to grow with the genetic gift of her father's people. Inside, she could hear Kai speaking with their latest refugees, 3 survivors of Imperial experimentation that their network had managed to extract from a facility in the Outer Rim. Since their escape, they had built something neither had imagined possible, a sanctuary for others like Ilara, victims of the Empire's cruel science. The door slid open behind her, and Kai stepped out onto the balcony. Even now, months later, the sight of him brought a quickening to her pulse, a shimmer of patterns across her skin. They're settled, he reported, coming to stand beside her. The Lyrian girl is responding well to your treatments. Alara nodded, satisfaction warming her. Her cellular structure remembers its original pattern. She will heal. Kai's arm slipped around her waist, drawing her against him. In the deepening twilight, their differences seemed less pronounced, just two beings finding solace in each other's presence. Any word from Vale? Alara asked, knowing he'd spoken with Resistance Command earlier. Another facility located in the Cygnus sector. They want us to consult on the extraction plan. Us? Alara's patterns brightened with pleasure. The Resistance had been slow to trust her, but gradually her knowledge and abilities had proven invaluable. They specifically requested you, Kai confirmed, pride evident in his voice. Your insight into Imperial security protocols saved 8 lives in the last operation. She turned in his arms, studying the face that had become as familiar to her as her own. Lines of exhaustion marked his features, testament to their demanding work, yet happiness radiated from him in a way she'd never sensed during their desperate flight from Vexilia. We should go, she decided. Others still in cages, waiting for someone to see them as people. Kai nodded, his hand coming up to trace the luminescent patterns on her cheek, a gesture that had become their private ritual, an acknowledgement of the miracle that had brought them together. I see you, he murmured, the simple phrase carrying the weight of everything between them. I see you, she echoed, rising on tiptoes to press her lips to his. Their kiss deepened, familiar yet always new, the meeting of two worlds, two species, two souls who had found in each other something worth fighting for. Later, as darkness settled over Aruna, they lay tangled together in sheets still warm from their lovemaking. Alara's head rested on Kai's chest, her fingers tracing the scars that mapped his years of battle. Her own body bore similar marks, evidence of pain transformed into strength. Do you ever regret it, she asked softly, choosing me over your mission? Kai's fingers combed gently through her hair, considering the question. The Empire still stood. The war continued. Yet here in this small corner of the galaxy, they had created something the Empire could never understand, a haven built on compassion rather than exploitation, on seeing the person beneath the differences. Not for a moment, he answered truthfully. You taught me something I'd forgotten, that saving one life can be just as important as saving thousands. Alara's patterns pulsed with contentment as she settled more comfortably against him. Outside their window, the first stars of evening appeared, distant worlds where others perhaps waited for rescue, for recognition, for someone to see them as more than specimens. Tomorrow they would return to the fight, continue the work of healing and liberation. But tonight belonged to them alone, a mercenary who had found his heart and an experiment who had found her humanity, creating between them something neither Empire nor Resistance had anticipated. Something that, against all odds, felt remarkably like home.